Hello, welcome to the Southern Bible Thumper channel. For this upload, we will be reading 2 Samuel 20. And there happened to be a man of Belial, whose name was Sheba, the son of Bichri, a Benjamite, and he blew a trumpet and said, We have no part in David, neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse, every man to his tent, O Israel. So every man of Israel went up from after David and followed Sheba, the son of Bichri. But the men of Judah clave unto their king from Jordan even to Jerusalem. And David came to his house at Jerusalem, and the king took the 10 women his concubines, whom he had left to keep the house, and put them in a ward, and fed them, but went not in unto them. So they were shut up unto the day of their death, living in widowhood. Then said the king to Amasa, Assemble me the men of Judah within 3 days, and be thou here present. So Amasa went to assemble the men of Judah, but he tarried longer than the set time which he had appointed him. And David said to Abishai, Now shall Sheba the son of Bichri do us more harm than did Absalom. Take thou thy lord's servants, and pursue after him, lest he get him fenced cities and escape us. And there went out after him Joab's men, and the Sherethites, and the Pelethites, and all the mighty men, and they went out of Jerusalem to pursue after Sheba the son of Bichri. When they were great when they were at the great stone which is Gibeon, Amasa went before them, and Joab's garment that he had put on was girded unto him, and upon it a girdle with the sword fastened upon his loins in the sheath thereof, and as he went forth it fell out. And Joab said to Amasa, Art thou in health, my brother? And Joab took Amasa by the beard with the right hand to kiss him. But Amasa took no heed to the sword that was in Joab's hand, so he smote him therewith in the fifth rib, and shut out his bowels to the ground, and struck him not again, and he died. So Joab and Abishai his brother pursued after Sheba the son of Bichri. And one of Joab's men stood by him and said, He that favoreth Joab, and he that is for David, let him go after Joab. And Amasa wallowed in blood in the midst of the highway. And when the man saw that all the people stood still, he removed Amasa out of the highway into the field, and cast a cloth upon him, when he saw that every one that came by him stood still. When he was removed out of the highway, all the people went on after Joab to pursue after Sheba the son of Bichri. And he went through all the tribes of Israel unto Abel, and to Beth-maachah, and all the Berites. And they were gathered together, and went also after him. And they came and besieged him in Abel of Beth-maachah, and they cast up a bank against the city, and it stood in the trench. And all the people that were with Joab battered the wall to throw it down. Then cried a wise woman out of the city, Hear, say, I pray you unto Joab, Come near hither, that I may speak with thee. And when he was come near unto her, the woman said, Art thou Joab? And he answered, I am he. Then she said unto him, Hear the words of thine handmaid. And he answered, I do hear. Then she spake, saying, They were wont to speak in old time, saying, They shall surely ask counsel at Abel, and so they ended the matter. I am one of them that are peaceable and faithful in Israel. Thou seekest to destroy a city and a mother in Israel. Why wilt thou swallow up the inheritance of the Lord? And Joab answered and said, far be it from me that I should swallow up or destroy. The matter is not so, but a man of Mount Ephraim, Sheba, the son of Bichri by name, hath lifted up his hand against the king, even against David. Deliver him only, and I will depart from the city. And the woman said unto Joab, Behold, his head shall be thrown to thee over the wall. Then the woman went unto all the people in her wisdom, and they cut off the head of Sheba the son of Bichri, and cast it out to Joab. And he blew a trumpet, and they retired from the city, every man to his tent. And Joab returned to Jerusalem unto the king. Now Joab was over all the host of Israel, and Benaiah the son of Jehoiada was over the Sherethites and over the Pelethites, and Adoram was over the tribute, and Jehoshaphat the son of Eluid was recorder, and Sheva was scribe, and Zadok and Abiathar were the priests, and Ira also the Jairite was a chef ruler about David. In the previous chapter, 2 Samuel 19, David reacts very badly to the loss of his son. Joab, his army captain, advises David to make an appearance and formally address Israel. David makes an appearance at the city gate, sends messengers to Judah, then crosses Jordan. In the current chapter, 2 Samuel 20, a man, Sheba, influences a lot of Israel against David. This is the second time a rival has gained influence in David's kingdom. Joab, David's army captain, has Sheba killed. David locks his concubines away for the rest of their lives. Summarizing 2 Samuel chapter 20, in verses 1 and 2, we learn that there's a man named Sheba. Sheba is a dissident who does not believe in David's leadership. He is able to influence all the men of Israel away from David except for Judah. This is the third time that David's leadership has been undermined. The last time, it was through his son Absalom, which was so significant that in chapter 15, verse 30, King David had to flee his own kingdom, weeping and barefoot. When we look at chapter 18, verse 7, we learn that this is a civil war. Israel's army and David's soldiers, they're going to battle together. This is two groups of Israel. We also learn when we look at chapter 19. So, chapter 19, in chapter 18, Absalom is David's men have to deal with Absalom because they cannot let this man just take David's kingdom while David is still alive. David has not approved for him to be king. No one has approved for him to be king. He just wants to do a hostile takeover. So in chapter 18, his men are forced to neutralize Absalom and it ends his life. So when we get here to chapter 19, David is having to sort of just show his face and do the ceremony where he talks to the people of Israel because the people that saved his life, they need to feel grateful because they aren't able to celebrate this win. But also, there's a sizable portion of people that don't want David to be their king. And so we see this in 2 Samuel 19 when he makes this address, because this is the chapter where he's going around and talking to everybody, you know, to try to show he's not so hurt about his son. And in verse 9, the people are talking amongst themselves and they're saying, yeah, the king has rescued us, but his own son Absalom sent him running. We actually wanted Absalom to be our king. So this idea that his leadership is not honored properly, it's been there from the very beginning, but this is another manifestation is through his son Absalom. The first time that this appears where David's leadership is unclear, it just doesn't have the same honor as the way Saul's leadership was or the judges. Well, in my opinion, part of why that's starting to change is because it's getting further away from what God intended. God originally didn't intend for them to have any leaders, but humans insisted on leadership. Okay, the first time we see this schism or this undermine in David's leadership, well, when we look at 1 Samuel 16, David is anointed to be king, but this is while Saul is still the leader. So King Saul is still king, and David is working for King Saul. King Saul is his landlord, boss, and father-in-law at the same time. So when King Saul wants to kill him, he's now having to flee. 1 Samuel 20, David is having to flee. There are 31 chapters in the first book of Samuel, and he was anointed to be king in Samuel 16. We don't see him get any stability or be able to be anointed as king until 2 Samuel 2 when he goes to Judah. As soon as he's anointed king of Judah in verse 4, Abner, who was Saul's war captain, Abner uses his political influence to get 11 other tribes of Israel to agree on a different person to be the leader. And that was one of Saul's other sons that was never mentioned until now when it's a matter of politics. So that's the very first time when David first becomes king. As soon as he's anointed to be king over Judah, now here's some there's that schism being made from the very beginning that these 11 tribes aren't under David's leadership. And so it was like that for 7 years, but David was able to rule the entire Israel for 33 years, but just illustrating that this has happened a few times. Summarizing 2 Samuel chapter 20, so in verse 1 and 2, we find that Sheba has declared himself a dissident and opposes David's leadership. So he's able to influence all the men of Israel except for Judah away from David. So that's, that. Verse 3 is a standalone piece of information. So David comes to Jerusalem, the 10 concubines he left to take care of his place in 2 Samuel chapter 15. He left 10 concubines to keep the place. When we get here to 2 Samuel chapter 20, verse 3, David comes back to that place and he placed them under guard, and they were regarded as widows, where he provided for them, but they lived confined. Another thing to note in 2 Samuel chapter 16, verse 21, there was an advisor that David had that he really highly regarded. He turned on David and began advising his son Absalom. And he advised Absalom that the first thing you should do is sleep with all of your father's concubines. Now, whether David found out about that or not, we don't know. But as soon as he's able to deal with that situation, this is what he does. So that's the last time that's going to be referred to in this chapter. Then we go to verse 4 and 5. The king starts to call on Amasa. Now, Amasa is the war captain that Absalom set in place before he died. And Amasa occupies the same role as Abner did for Saul or Joab does for David. And in chapter 19, David tells Amasa that you can work for me as a commander. And chapter 19, verse 13, when we look in the interlinear, it does say, in place of Joab. You are the army commander before me, in place of Joab. When we look at these other translations, in place of Joab, it just it just made me pause to read that, because David has been betrayed multiple times, even by his own son, and Joab has demonstrated nothing but consistency. So Amasa, who was loyal to your son, who was trying to hostilely take your kingdom from you, like, isn't it a little early to start giving him duties and calling on him? Just made me pause. But the king gives Amasa a task. Amasa takes too long to do it. So then David starts talking to Abishai. Abishai is Joab's brother, but Joab is like the chief leader. So instead of him talking to Joab, he's talking to Abishai. We also know about Joab. Joab was responsible in chapter 15? No, chapter maybe 2 Samuel 14. Okay, so this is 2 Samuel 14. Joab was responsible in 2 Samuel 14 for uh, getting Absalom back into the kingdom with David. So that could have been something that's now starting to cause a deterioration. But also, chapter 19, it was Joab who told David, you don't need to just be sitting up here crying like this. This hurt about Absalom. You need to consider the people that you're ruling to make sure you have a loyal base. So after this talking to, now we get to this place, and now David is giving commands to Joab's brother and to the new guy. Okay. And telling Amasa, you can work in place of Joab, who has been your faithful servant. We get to 6 to 13. David says to Abishai that Sheba is going to do more harm than his own son Absalom. So pursue them, neutralize that threat. Joab's men. Joab is Abishai's brother. So the men that Joab usually oversees, these men are under Abishai's command. So Joab and his brother Abishai, they're the ones who are taking, neutralizing this threat, dealing with this problem. Amasa is the one that was the army captain of Absalom before his death. He's the one that David invited to work in place of Joab. So Joab had one of Amasa had one of Joab's garments on. He had a knife with it, a sword with it, and it fell out. Job stabbed him to death and emptied out his entrails to where he was writhing on the highway. Uh, they moved him out the highway and they just kept going. I mean that's I guess Joab was not going to have Amasa taking his place, working alongside him, so he just killed him. Okay, so now we get verses 14 and 15. Joab and his people attacked Sheba, who built a bank. They besieged Sheba, but he was in this territory in Abel. So what they did was they just began attacking this area trying to get Sheba. A woman called out for Joab to talk to him in verse 16. And she confirms his identity. And the woman says, like, why do you want to destroy our city? And he says, I'm not trying to destroy your city. We just want Sheba. If we can get him, we'll leave. And the woman says, all right, we'll throw his head over the wall. So, verse 22, the people cut off his head and threw it to Joab. So Joab blew the ram's horn. They dispersed because that was literally all they needed. Then, verse 23 to 26. This just gives us a list of what jobs people are doing. So Joab commanded the whole army of Israel, of course, because he has murdered his opposition or murdered his competition. Benaiah was over the Sherethites and Pelethites. Adoram was over forced labor. Jehoshaphat was court historian. Shiva is secretary. Zadok and Abiathar are priest. And Ira is David's personal priest. It does say chief ruler in the King James Version. Chief minister. Very interesting stuff. Muy interesante. Thank you for clicking on the video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please watch the whole video. I love you. Have a wonderful day.